Welcome everyone, this is Short Change Heroes, and today I have something to talk about. It's a little injustice that's being done in the gaming community currently. And no, I'm not talking about SJW warriors trying to ruin it. This is actually a subject that won't be broached too often due to the nature of what it is, and it's just historical accuracies and inaccuracies in video games. And before you run away from this boring topic, I urge you to listen because currently there's a very popular game on the market right now called Battlefield 1 that is kind of serving as an injustice towards a very important piece of world history. And most will know what I'm talking about. I mean, if you haven't played Battlefield 1, it is a really fun game. It's really interesting. The campaign, though, is the part that I have a problem with. And for those of you who have played it, you probably know what I'm talking about. And before I really dive into this, I have no problem with something taking a piece of history and fantasizing it and romanticizing it to a point where it's not exactly what really happened, but there's a point where it's too far and it serves as an injustice towards whatever historical event it is, especially one that was so devastating and horribly disgusting as World War I. And whether we like it or not, this kind of media, this entertainment, and this art is what people are exposed to who don't know anything about that time period. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I'm a history buff, but I know damn well that no one dons a full set of medieval body armor and runs around with like a Gatling gun just mowing down enemies with complete ease. And I get the dilemma. There is a ludonarrative dissonance between what they want to tell as a narrative and the gameplay. No one, especially in the mainstream first-person shooter market, is going to want to play a game where you're sitting in the trenches with a semi-automatic rifle waiting around for ages just to move up and advance maybe a few hundred yards. Now, whoever designed and wrote the first level, I congratulate them. That was a very accurate portrayal of the war, and it really sets up the feeling and the idea that you really are just one more number in this massive war of people just pointlessly dying. And DICE does try to sprinkle a little bit of authenticity here and there with some facts, and they tried to put importance on, like I said, that first level where individual lives don't really matter in the context of this very bloody war. But then the campaign does a 180 and really focuses on the fact that you are something special, that you are an individual and you alone are the one that's able to finish and complete tasks. And this is in stark contrast to the game I will be talking about, which really reminds you at every step that you are worthless and that you could die, and that it isn't about winning the war, it's about personal survival. In this other game I want to talk about, while it does have somewhat of a following and I've seen people who really love it, it has a lot of underrepresentation in the gaming community. And that game is by Ubisoft. It's called Valiant Hearts: The Great War. And when I say underrepresented, I don't mean complete non-representation. It has a huge following. There's plenty of people who know about it. And on top of that, it's on almost every single device and console imaginable, so it has its audience. But when compared with the mainstream massive first-person shooters such as Battlefield, it of course is completely dwarfed by those. And obviously part of the reason is because it isn't in those mainstream categories where there's a bunch of people who are already willing to play it. It is an action puzzle adventure sort of game, so unfortunately it isn't in people's minds when they think of a war game. Not when they think of a shooter that's set in a historical time period such as World War I. But I still think it needs people. I still think it needs a following. I think that is what we need to look at for a game that can really express what World War I really entailed. Part of the narrative I didn't really enjoy just because it was more childish. It was centered on a German general that they were trying to capture, fight, or something like that. But the overall narrative and theme that was trying to portray what the war was like and how awful the conditions were, now that was pretty spot on. And obviously I didn't live in that time period, but I think it highlighted really well the progression. At the start, it was much more light and happy, while it was people were forced to do certain things as far as the characters had to go to the war, but it still had a lighthearted tone. The music was more upbeat, the general art was a little more colorful, but then by the end of the story, things are getting really dark really fast. And I will just come out and say it made me tear up at the end. The ending, I have no reason to ruin it, but it was holy hell. It's just powerful, and it really sends a powerful message. And I actually know a lot of other people who feel the same way because it hit them hard, and you really see how pointless, especially that war was. So Valiant Hearts spans like 3 years and has, like I said, a much more compelling narrative. The theme is really trying to push it forward much more than the Battlefield theme. Obviously, when you're being a fucking super soldier, through Valiant Hearts, you see the progression of the war. You see how it slowly takes a toll on everyone and really just causes this entire world suffering and pain. And most of the time, you're not trying to take out the big bad villain. You're not trying to win the war single-handedly. You're just trying to survive. And there's a lot of sections where you play the female where you're actually just trying to heal people. And I love how they take aside the time to have an entire piece of the campaign centered around healing, which is what we should be focusing more on. If we do have to get into war, I think that is the primary focus. We shouldn't glorify the killing and the violence. We should say, hey, look at this. This is the important part, healing. And she did it without discrimination. She would heal the enemy soldiers and friendly soldiers alike. And of course, people are going to enjoy Battlefield 1 more. I mean, it's a shooter. It's glorifying you. It's helping you feel like a super soldier. And the other one, you're playing some girl who like walks around doing puzzle games, and then a little click piece where you have to do like basically a Guitar Hero session where you heal people. And I get that. The mechanics aren't necessarily the most engaging. There were times where the puzzles would kind of bore me, and I'm sure the instant action, the instant gratification for, say, a teenager just blowing away people during this cool setting, that's gonna bring people in way easier than trying to sell an action puzzle adventure that's way more like dark and terrifying. On top of that, the art style doesn't really help to sell it. I mean, it looks really cartoony at first, and when I was viewing it before I even purchased it, I was kind of hesitant just because the art style alone, while it's a gorgeous art style, I was more into the immersive 3D effects. And obviously Battlefield's, I've always had that. Their engine is beautiful, but this in its own right, the art style, once I came to appreciate it, was so much more. Every layer of this game, I can feel that the theme was trying to be interwoven with every piece, every mechanic. Whichever part of Ubisoft did this, they really put some love and compassion into this to really portraying something that is really underrepresented. I mean, I feel like I learned more from this game than all my world history classes. I mean, I have a bachelor's degree, and you have to take your history classes, and I feel like they just kind of glossed over World War I. Most of the information that I know now is from the little tidbits you get during that game. And while some of it was kind of forced or just kind of side items, if you wanted to take the time and sit down and read stuff, you get a really, really good feel for what it really was like. And they take these side items and put them in places to where it's relevant. If you're in the trenches, you're going to get pictures of the trenches. You're going to get items that you're going to learn about in the trenches. Am I talking about this? I mean, it sounds like I have a huge hard-on for this game, but really, I just want people to play it because it was such an amazing experience for myself. And while I'm sure I would really enjoy completing the Battlefield campaign, you just can't get me to do it when you're asking me to. The theme, it just completely clashes. I hate it. As a Battlefield game, I wish they would place more emphasis on an open world with team combat and not just this lone ranger running out just trying to do everything on his own. And that last level of Valiant Hearts will really, it exemplifies everything I love about it, where you're being forced to do something that you don't want to do. You're being killed in the name of political agendas that you have no idea even exist, and when he's being forced to go through and watch people die that he's probably been fighting with for months on end, and then he himself, I don't want to ruin it, but he gets court-martialed and then killed, and it just hits you real hard. And I didn't see any of that. I didn't see any of that in Battlefield 1. The first level, yeah, like that gets to you, but past that, you're Superman running around with a Gatling gun. And in fact, Valiant Hearts did a better job of exploring a single person's perspective than Battlefield 1 did, which seems completely fake and not representative. And like I said, I get it. If it's not a game that people are as willing to play as an extremely popular first-person shooter, I understand that. But what baffles me is when the reviewers, the people who we're supposed to trust to see the game's review and want to go out and buy it, it doesn't match up. It doesn't align. IGN gives Battlefield 1 a 9, whereas its review for Valiant Hearts is a fucking 7.7. And you can see in the comments for Battlefield 1, everyone's like, this does not deserve this review. Whereas with the Valiant Hearts, they're saying the same thing but in the opposite way. This deserves a better review. IGN cites Battlefield 1 as having a compelling campaign, yet apparently some of the mechanics bog down, and I get that for Valiant Hearts, but it doesn't cite its story as compelling, yet it's I don't even know. So to wrap things up, like I said, the reason I want to express this is because one is much more mass marketed and is going to appeal to a younger audience who is now going to have, I think, a pretty skewed idea of what the war is if they take this to heart, which I really hope they don't. Yet they need to play Valiant Hearts. It's a much more engrossing story, and I like the mechanics more. I mean, Battlefield 1 is a very run-of-the-mill. It feels like it's copy and pasted from Battlefront, Hardline, all of them. It's just a skin swap. I urge those who haven't played Valiant Hearts to play it. I urge those who have played Battlefield 1 to understand that the narrative is widely romanticized ridiculously. And I urge people who have played Valiant Hearts to tell people to play such a powerfully poignant story. Anyways, guys, that's all from me. And if you want to comment and try to debate me, like, I would love to, because I would love to tell you you're wrong. If you like this, please give it a like. And if you want to continue seeing stuff like this, think about subscribing. Like I said, guys, that's all. So I'm out.